Come unthinkable. Come see what
out of this, and we now have a tornado warning, and it is elevated tornado warning, which is a tornado confirmed in Lawrence County. So a lot of this was now transitioning, just kind of catching you up if you're waking up with us. This was a severe weather event to the west.
Yep.
Missouri has a lot of damage from tornadoes that occurred earlier on in the day. The line is now making it into our area with less fuel. Less fuel means that it's starting to weaken some. But this is likely the strongest storm within the line. So just again to catch you up, most of our area is under a tornado watch until 10 a.m. We've got severe thunderstorm warnings banked up against the western part of our area. And let me show you graphics here. The tornado warning is only for Lawrence County. Lawrence County, you are under a tornado warning until 5 a.m. So this is 27 minutes from now. And I'm going to show you what this looks like on Storm View HD. So this bow here, this kind of arcing area, is what we refer to as going outflow dominated. What that means is it's trying to push cold air ahead of this. Traditionally, what that means is the rotation will fall back into the storm. As it falls into the storm, it would then weaken. So Bryce, I'm going to come over to you. What we really want to look at is where that rotation is with respect to the storm, and is there any precipitation ahead of it? Because if it is, that's going to cool things off. That's going to bury that rotation, and that's going to lower that tornado potential.
Yeah, exactly. So what you're looking at, this is from our GR2 analyst. This is the radar that we use during severe weather events. So on the right side of your screen, of course, you've probably heard this a few times. You've watched this before. You got the reds and greens getting a little tighter here. But just to give you kind of what the storm looked like in the past, what it looked like earlier when it was doing damage, you can see how much more of a tight couple this was. This is about 15-20 minutes ago or so. And now we're talking about this going outflow dominated. And Mark mentioned about this having rain out in front of the rotation. So when you look at the right side of your screen, the rotation's right here, and there's a lot of rain out in front of it now. So this is helping to cool down the atmosphere, which again, this is going to help to eat up, and hopefully we should start to see this weaken a little bit more as we head over the next few minutes and the next few radar scans. So this warning just barely clips Lawrence County, the western side of it, and a new severe thunderstorm warning coming out as well to cover that, to cover Paoli, English, parts of Salem, and this one also has tornado possible on it.
I think that we got to note that.
Yeah, so this is important. So while we are kind of focused on that tornado warning to our northwest, it might clip a little bit of Lawrence County. So just to pivot a little bit to the severe thunderstorm warning, this includes Crawford, Orange, and Washington counties in our viewing area. Now, I also want to note that this has tornado possible on it, but outside of that, the National Weather Service is also indicating that we could see 70-mile-per-hour wind gusts of this, and is calling the threat considerable. So put us a little bit of a storm track on here. This thing's moving at a good speed, 65 miles an hour. So French Lick, you got about 8 minutes until you see maybe 50 to 60-mile-per-hour wind gusts, if not a little higher, moving to the area. Paoli 16 minutes, Bono 24, and Salem around 35 minutes. So we need to watch out for the straight line wind damage aspect along this severe thunderstorm warning is starting to roll toward our area, Mark, and as it starts to roll into parts of our southern Indiana communities. Once again, to our north, we still have that tornado warning. That's the reason why we are live at the moment. But again, this is just barely clipping a few Lawrence County in our northwestern communities. So going back to that again, areas that are included in this in Lawrence County, Spice Valley, and we're getting into a little bit more of those rural locations, Mark, as it starts to roll up into Lawrence County.
And so, you know, there are multiple warnings now in effect. As Bryce mentioned, we cut in for the tornado warning. We do want to mention that the apex of this, so I want to take this out a little bit wider so you can kind of get a sense of what's going on here. There's a couple things to note. There's still quite a bit of lightning, but you'll notice that there was more lightning on the back, and the front edge is starting to lose lightning. Almost every piece of data shows that our northwest counties would have the best potential for rotation and isolated tornadoes. Second, as this thing starts to weaken, normally it's going to blow out that air. As that happens, that would produce the stronger winds. See how this kind of resembles a bow from a bow and arrow? What that means is that there's strong winds that are pushing down in the middle. Now, if the winds were equal across that, it would look like a perfectly straight line. The reason it looks like a bow is the winds are stronger coming through Jasper, and those will head towards English, French Lick, and Paoli. I want to go back over to the analyst and look at that rotation area. What we're keying in on here is where the rotation is. The reason this matters is rotation and thunderstorms key in on heat. Heat is fuel. So if the rotation buries in the rain core, we know that rain is cool, cooled air. It's going to weaken it. And so here is our area of rotation, which is right in the back. So Bryce, this is buried completely. I want to take this back maybe 3 or 4 scans because I want people to see how the rotation was much more significant as we went back. Go a couple more, one more here, and you can see the red and the greens are bright right next to each other. Number 2, you can see that rotation was on the edge here. Now watch as this rain area pushes out ahead of the rotation. What you're going to see as we move this forward, rain's now ahead right here, and what that does is bury this into the rain. And it weakens that rotation on every one of these scans. And right here now, the rotation is weakened off significantly. There is still some rotation, there's no question about it, but it is buried now into the rain area with rain out in front of it. Traditionally, what this means is rotation will weaken, tornado threat will go down. I don't think it's going to drop off the map just yet, but I think in the next, let's say, 10, 15 minutes, we should lose a lot of this rotation. And I think what we're going to do is transition more towards a damaging wind threat on this. And Bryce, I think that's probably going to be, as we look west of I-65 tonight, our primary threat on this entire scenario is northwestern part of our area, maybe a couple of tornado warnings. It would seem that as you get towards Louisville, you're talking more of a damaging wind threat.
Yeah, exactly. And this is something that's been pretty consistent in data over the last 4 or 5 days even, showing that this line should be weakening as it reaches our area. And that's what we're seeing now. Not to say that you can't get some damaging winds out of it, bare minimum, but compared to what this was doing in Missouri earlier, it's nothing really compared to it because it's running into an atmosphere where, again, you have a lot less what's called CAPE, or convective available potential energy. So this is basically just storm energy, is a fancy way of saying it. But it's also 4:39 in the morning. This is one of the coolest times of the entire day. We don't have nearly as much storm energy as we had earlier. And we've been mentioning that if this line moved through our area at 6, 7 o'clock yesterday evening, it'd be a completely different story. And that's what happened to our west. But for us, this is running into an environment where these storms cannot maintain the strength that they had to the west. Does that mean that can't be impactful? No. So that's why I think we're mainly focused, as Mark mentioned, along and west of I-65. So this warning, again, only includes Lawrence County in our viewing area in Indiana. And you can see those red and greens becoming a little bit more, again, just very, very outflow dominated. They're not nearly as tight. There's barely even a couplet anymore. There's some minor rotation that's probably aloft. As Mark was mentioning earlier, there's not a lot of surface-based instability left. There is some aloft. So I think bare minimum, Lawrence County, outside of the strong gusty winds, you're talking about some hail. There's a good amount of hail in that one as well. A nice hail core just southwest of Indian Springs, which is just outside of our viewing area. So this is going to continue to roll its way in. Let's focus a little bit more on the severe thunderstorm warning that Mark's just now panned to.
And I want you, if you could, Bryce, to keep an eye on that. Also the area that's near Ferdinand, just because what we're going to have to watch as this continues to move through is just to make sure we don't get any notches. Sometimes when these storms push the cold air out, if you get a notch, you can get a brief spin up. This would be more of a scenario of a brief spin up. So that's something that we're going to need to continue to watch here. But this thing has the potential to produce some 70-mile-an-hour winds, in particular what we refer to as the apex of the bow. So those strong winds, Ferdinand right now, and we do have a spotter in that area that I'm going to check on and see what they're reporting. We've got some power lines that have been reported down between Jasper and Ireland. The REC has been dispatched there. Power lines down in the Shiloh area, and power reported out in the Celestine area. So this is all over different parts of Du Bois County. So we know that we're getting probably 60+ mile-an-hour winds out of this area. That's the reason why we've got this, what we refer to as an elevated severe thunderstorm warning. 60-mile-an-hour winds, and it's cooking. 70-mile-an-hour winds, and it's moving so fast. So these are racing off to the east-northeast at around 65. You almost can't even get a track on there. So 4 minutes from now, Paoli. So let's think about that. French Lick, Paoli, 60-mile-an-hour winds. Be aware that this absolutely can down power lines, and I believe you're probably talking closer to 70 in French Lick. I think in English, you're probably going to talk closer to 60, but French Lick being right in the apex of that bow is more likely to get 70-mile-an-hour winds. And then that would mean Salem, more than likely to get 65 to 70. And then Pierce, we're talking 37 minutes. So 12 minutes from now in Paoli, which would put it at 4:54 a.m., and then puts it in English 17 minutes from now, which would be for you at around about 5 a.m.-ish. And then putting it in Salem at around 5:10.
Yeah.
And we'll stay with this as long as there's tornado warnings on it. But I'm going to come back over to you, Bryce, because you're eyeing this on the analyst.
Yep.
What we would expect is that rotation, because it's now on the back edge of that northern part of that storm, as it approaches Lawrence County, since it's buried in rain, that it would weaken. Status on that?
Yeah, it still looks pretty weak, and again, looks very elevated now to me. And again, we are also looking about 3,800 feet up into the air from where this radar is, so we're looking higher up, and it's still not that tight of rotation, even that high aloft. So there's some minor rotation that may be able to clip. We're talking northwest Lawrence County, so Williams, maybe the northwestern side of the Bedford area. And when we switch over to correlation coefficient, even with that newest radar scan, you got some red degrees close there, but not a tight couplet over Indian Springs. So we'll check for a radar for a tornado debris signature, which we're not seeing anymore. There was one earlier, which is why this is a purple box. This was a tornado confirmed on the ground down to the southwest when it had that stronger rotation, but now not nearly as strong. And I'm going to go back to that straight line wind aspect again, this is a really good kind of look at it from about, say, Orleans down through French Lick and Paoli, and I really want to focus in on the French Lick and Paoli area here, simply because of that straight line wind aspect. It's so easy to see just that bowing segment. So when Mark was talking about that 65 to 70 mile per hour wind gust potential, again, that's that area where I would really hone in on. It's from the northern side of French Lick all the way down through maybe the Bird's Eye area. You can see a nice little hail core there just east of Du Bois. So with this bowing here, this is going to be where your strongest straight line wind gusts are. So again, Paoli, you're going to be up next. French Lick is seeing that now, and this is pushing its way off to the east really, really quickly. The good thing is that there's no rotation in that. So this is why that straight line wind aspect is much larger. You don't see anywhere in here where you can really say that there's a couplet. This is really outflow dominated. Doesn't mean that you can't get wind damage, because you can. 70-mile-an-hour winds, it can knock down power lines, which we heard earlier. We already have reports of that in between Jasper, and it can knock down trees. So if you're in French Lick and you're in Paoli, if you're contemplating whether to go to a safe place or not, I would say ease on the side of caution, simply because you have a lot of straight line winds here. If you have a tree near your house or something like that, this is where I would become a little bit more concerned with it, simply because of that bowing aspect there. But there's not really a tight couplet, but we're going to keep an eye on this and watch it, because often with these weakening scenarios, it doesn't take much, Mark, to get a quick little spin up, which we knew was going to be a potential over the last few days.
And yeah, you know, there may be some hints of that right around French Lick. So you're under a severe thunderstorm warning near French Lick, but it definitely is showing some little notches around there. We've got to be careful on that stuff. That's the kind of stuff that can produce an in-between quick tornado. I think that the actual, ironically, the area that's under the tornado warning, I don't think that it even has a chance actually right now to be producing. I think the fact that it's buried now into the back of the storm also lowers that threat. I think that we're now into a scenario where it's more concerning straight line winds, and what we noted, that you can get quick spin up tornadoes in this type scenario. I'm checking through some cameras around the area because we were able to see the West Baden Hotel, and definitely that severe storm is moving right over French Lick, West Baden, and through Paoli right now, and judging from it, it definitely looks like 60 to 70 mile an hour winds. Keep in mind that we do have reports of damage already, so what we know is that power was reported out in a number of different locations out of Du Bois County. So Celestine area, Shoals area, that was Martin County, and then electrical pole was knocked down in the northwestern part of Du Bois County. The Weather Service is also noting exactly what we are saying, is that they're watching northwest Orange County very, very closely for a potential spin up. It is, I think you could justify this going either way. Whether it's a quick tornado spin up or straight line winds that are moving through there, I sometimes say if both are 70 miles an hour, does it really matter?
Right.
You know, if you're talking about 70-mile-an-hour winds, whether it's rotating as a tornado or whether it's straight line, it doesn't necessarily matter. It's going to do the exact same amount of damage. But please be aware, Crawford, Du Bois, Orange, and Washington counties, we have 70-mile-an-hour wind threat. We have a tornado possible. So I think that sometimes what happens when severe thunderstorm warnings are issued is people don't take it seriously because they're like, you know what, it's not a tornado warning. Well, we're telling you that a tornado could form on this with little or zero to advance notice. So we're putting what we call a tag on there that's saying a tornado is possible. We are telling you that a tornado could form at little to no advance notice. So you should be taking this. If you're concerned about a tornado, then consider this as a tornado warning. There's no penalty in getting to your safe location right now. Tornado warning coming out for Orange County. National Weather Service just issued. There is the tornado warning. We mentioned this earlier. This is one of the things I spoke about when I did my Facebook Live video and on TV yesterday, that our northwest counties would have the best chance of a tornado. So areas like Bedford, Seymour, through French Lick and Paoli would have the best chance. This is the new tornado warning that was just issued. Let me get you specifics on that. Tornado warning for Orange and Washington County until 5:15. This is for about 30 minutes from now. It fortunately doesn't have a lot of hail on it. So that's a good thing. And Bryce, I just want to remind you here, let's switch over, if we could, on your radar over to the Louisville site. We're just going to get a better view on that storm that's coming through Paoli right now. I'm going to do a scope on this as Bryce changes radar locations, just so we can get a better sense of what we're looking at here. This is the area rotation. I'm going to step over to the wall real quickly, and you'll notice just north of French Lick. So what you're going to look here for, the most important thing when you're assessing rotation is getting a sense of where the radar is. So we know the radar is near Louisville. So the radar beam you can see as it scans by is coming into the storm right here. So what we're looking at is for red and green to be next to each other on either side of the radar. That's the scan. So this would be the east side of the radar, this is the west. This is what prompted the tornado warning just north of French Lick. So in Orleans, I need you to take your tornado safety precautions. This is going to be on your doorstep in 3 to 4 minutes. Even if it doesn't produce a tornado, you're still talking 70-mile-an-hour winds. If it produces a weak tornado, you're talking 70 to 80-mile-an-hour winds. So go ahead and protect yourself and get into your safe location. What does that mean? It means downstairs. If you can get underneath something, that's a good choice. I want you to stay away from windows. That's a really important one. And any interior room you can get into is going to keep you the safest. And that warning just goes right along the northern part of Orange County, that tornado warning that was issued, just right along the northern part. And then down the line, we need to be thinking about Campbellsburg. And here you can see Bryce now moving over, showing that area of rotation that was just north of the French Lick area that is heading towards Orleans. And then ultimately, it looks like it's going to go just a touch north of Campbellsburg and south of the Sparkville area. Bryce, can you put on this side here, if you could, normalize rotation? So let's see if we could go normalize rotation.
Yeah, I think the radar is having an issue. It's not popping up at the moment. So I think this scan might have an issue. I'm going to take it back one. Okay. So you can see it a little bit easier there.
So what happened is the radar, it appears that it dropped out velocity on that particular scan. Sometimes that can be a communication issue. But here is that area rotation. So this is French Lick, just off to the north of French Lick. There's the area rotation heading towards Orleans. It's going to be south of Orleans. What road are we looking at here, Bryce?
Point 2 one more time over here.
Right over here. Yeah,
we are looking at State Road 37.
Okay, so just south of State Road 37. It's by about 1 mile south on State Road 37 of Orleans, Indiana. That's where the area of rotation is going. And you can see, again, it's got one of these little notches. So I want to take this out now a little bit wider and see, are we looking at any other notches? So you know, what we're going to be focused on here is any little appendages that are connected and sticking off. This is what we refer to as a bow echo. And I think, yes, we are focused obviously between Orleans and Paoli for a potential tornado, but I also want to be very, very clear. From Mitchell, Orleans, Paoli through English, this is going to be producing 70-mile-an-hour winds, which can cause destruction and power outages, and you got to prepare for that. Power outages very easily can occur on this. And lastly, Bryce, I just want to verify that rotation on the tornado warnings for west of Lawrence County. It's continuing to weaken.
Yeah.
So from that regard, it looks like the supercell that prompted the tornado warning is weakened. And now we're looking at a different scenario where this could drop a tornado. Now, Bryce, you're looking at what we call correlation coefficient. What this is looking for is the radar see anything different in that area of rain? Because you know rain's the same size.
Right.
So if there's something different in size here, that correlation coefficient is going to show that. And we know if there's something different in size, that's debris being lofted.
Right, exactly. And we would look for that right around where this minor rotation is. Again, it's just pretty elevated for the moment. But again, even if this is issued out of abundance of caution, it's good to mention, because we talked about earlier, with the tornado possible even on the severe thunderstorm warning, these quick spin-ups, I mean, they live up to the first half of the name. They are quick. So this is the reason behind it. And I think we're still not getting any velocity data from that newest scan. So we're going to have to keep an eye on this. We're not going to get any correlation coefficient scans either.
We do have that on HD, by the way, here. So
I think we just got it in.
Did we? Okay, I'm going to come back over.
We got CC in there.
Okay, I'm going to come back over to you, Bryce. Anything you see in there that would be specifically very concerning to you?
I would keep an eye right here. It's not really screaming any tornado debris to me at the moment.
But that is the location that we would be looking at.
Yes, because
that's
this
just
little
north of
notch
Paoli.
just north of Paoli. So it's a little bit more difficult without that velocity on there. So this is worth keeping an eye on, especially since we're missing a radar product on here. But we were talking about on StormView HD that we do have that. So we'll try to match it up here a little bit. So we're looking at just north of the Paoli area. I do think that this is worth keeping an eye on.
It's very close to Orleans.
Yeah, this little pop on correlation coefficient is worth watching. I'm not confident enough to say that this is a tornado debris signature at the moment, because we do have a little bit of hail in there just southwest of Paoli as well. But it is worth keeping an eye on as this continues to push its way off to the northeast. So Orleans, Campbellsburg, you're going to be up next as well when we look down the line here.
And that's right now over Orleans.
Yes, it's right over Orleans at the moment.
So if there was to be a tornado, it would be right over the Orleans area. And we're, from a perspective of looking at debris, we're not seeing anything in there. And this is what we refer to as transient rotation. This is going to be where it pops up and then where it comes back down. So as I look at this from the scope here inside there, the rotation is not significant. If we're to be looking at a tornado, it would be low end. And I don't know that differs that much from, let's say, getting 70-mile-an-hour straight line winds. So either way you look at it, you're probably talking in the Orleans area somewhere near 70-mile-an-hour winds. And then that's going to move down the line here and go just north of the Campbellsburg, Indiana area. So these are the areas that we're watching really closely. Remember, the other one we had the tornado warning on. I'm curious if the Weather Service expired that one. Nope, they reissued.
That's interesting.
Kind of somewhat shocking. So the National Weather Service in Indy has issued now a new tornado warning. New tornado warning just issued for Lawrence County. So let me just get to the timeline on that. New tornado warning for Lawrence County. I'll show you the specifics on that warning. So this is until, that's the original tornado warning until 5. This one's till 5:15, so it's only for another 15 minutes or so. And let's scope this storm as well. Again, when we have the potential for tornadoes, we absolutely want to be very, very thorough in how we assess. So that area rotation, there is some rotation there near the Indian Creek area. It's elevated. It's not tight rotation. When it was coming out of the northern part of Du Bois County, the rotation was closer. And remember, just west of Du Bois County is when it had a debris signature, meaning we knew there was a tornado on the ground. As we look at this now, the rotation's a little bit more broad, but it would be incorrect to say there's no rotation. There is still some rotation near the Indian Creek area. So as that continues its motion, where is it going? I'm going to do a track on this, just keeping in mind these things are racing northeastward. Yeah. So Dark Hollow, 4 minutes from now. This is going to be 8 minutes from now in the Marshall area. This is in rural northern Du Bois County. In the Pleasant Run area, 16 minutes from now. And 28 minutes from now, it'll be in the Elkinsville area. So these are the two areas that we have rotation on. There's no question as we look at this that our area of rotation and everything in the computer model data says that our northwest counties are going to have the best potential here for isolated tornadoes. But let's not ignore everything else that's occurring, because we have a severe thunderstorm warning that includes Washington County, Indiana, goes through Orange County, includes Crawford County, Indiana. We've got now the western part of Breckenridge County, Indiana, and also Meade County that would be included. 70-mile-an-hour winds are possible on these storms. These are elevated severe thunderstorm warnings. These are higher ends. So I'm going to show you strong winds heading towards southeast, 70-mile-an-hour winds heading towards English, heading towards the oil area. Right now over Santa Claus, we'll watch that little notch there. Yep. Tell City, you're looking at some 60 to 70 mile-per-hour winds. And it's busy here. The other thing that's worth noting, Bryce, is we know that the fuel is dropping, but there's still quite a bit of lightning on this. And I think that it would be incorrect to say that there's no fuel in our area. So I do think that what we're looking at now says there's reason to believe that these severe thunderstorms are going to last a little bit longer even than the data indicated, which kind of tanked them in our western counties. But with that amount of lightning, I think they probably can get at least 2 more counties past that. You're viewing the rotation here on our other computer on the analyst. I'm going to come back over to you. Let's assess. We have 2 areas of rotation, and we're going to start off. You are looking in Lawrence County. Two things I want to see. On the right there near the Ulatik area north of Bedford, are we talking about possible rotation? Is it tight rotation, and are you seeing debris?
It is pretty broad rotation, so none of this is incredibly tight, but we do have some strong wind gusts in here. I mean, we're looking at, again, this is about 6,000 feet up, so it's a little bit up there, but we're still talking about 53 knot winds there, so we're getting closer to those 60, 65 mile an hour winds aloft. Now, how much that's transferring down to the surface is still what's in question. What I can tell you is that there's not a lot of tight rotation still in that tornado warning for Lawrence County, but there's some minor broad rotation, and that can tighten real quick. We're going to keep an eye on a couple of these little notches that Mark was mentioning earlier. One here about to move into the Campbellsburg area. It's still really broad. You see that couplet's not tight, and we don't have any tornado debris signature on that either. As we look our way down south, just north of the Chambersburg area, again, you see the little notch on the left side of your screen, but there's not really much of a couplet in terms of rotation. And once again, there's nothing really screaming at me that we're going to see we're seeing any debris being lofted up into the air. And once again, we've lost velocity.
Yeah, and that's happened through the evening, so I'm kind of wondering if that itself might be a relic of maybe communication issues with the Weather Service. Sometimes this happens, unfortunately, and traditionally it happens when you don't want it to happen, but intermittently losing velocity. The velocity, remember, is really important because that's allowing Bryce to look at where the rotation is located.
Yeah, and I would still keep an eye right here south of Ferdinand. So again, this is about to move into our area once again. This little notch just east of around where Holiday World is in Santa Claus, Indiana. You can see the little notch on the regular reflectivity here, and you can see a little bit of a couplet there. And then unfortunately we lose it with the next scan. So that's something we're going to have to keep an eye on. Hopefully we can get that velocity back in here. Let's check out for...
And we can pull that in through the other radar.
So let's check for radar debris. So you may see these colors and you may scream, okay, there's debris flying, but this isn't under high reflectivity. This is out ahead of the storm. So we know that that's not a tornado debris signature. There's another one just south of Lamar. That little notch we'll watch as well heading over the next few minutes, because again, these can happen so quickly. But again, it's good to mention that these do have tornado possible tag on them, which covers the basis that again that this could spin up in a short to almost no time notice where radar can't even pick up on it. So on the latest scan we still have correlation coefficient, and now we're looking once again at the velocity tilt mark once again. Well, this is the one moving with that little notch near Ferdinand. There's nothing, again, really screaming out that we're seeing a tight couplet there.
Agree. I don't see anything out there that makes me overly nervous. Let's go further north again, scope this portion of the line and see rotation concerns. Nothing showing through southeast, nothing showing near Livonia that bothers me. Let's make that trek and continue further northward. Looking at the area where we have the tornado warning, I'm going to go in a little bit tighter here. It's right over Campbellsburg, Indiana right now. The area of rotation was definitely tighter a little bit earlier. So it's loose right now. There's not anything in there that shows me that there is a tornado occurring. Remember, Weather Service is going to be going with, there's a point here where I think we are very close to right now, where the Weather Service is going to be moving more towards severe with tornado possible on anything and everything, because it covers this scenario where you can get quick spin-ups. But it just doesn't look like to me that we've got a very broad idea that there's a tornado occurring. And I believe, and I just want to verify this, just got a new, I think the Weather Service may have dropped one of those tornado warnings. So let me check. Orange in Washington still. So no, I think that was a status there for the tornado warning in Orange County. But that rotation right now, I'm not overly impressed on what I'm seeing north of Bedford. This won't be in our viewing area for much more than about 10 more minutes. We'll continue to watch it. Look, you know, it is a tornado warning. We're not going to just ignore that fact. And we still have this tornado warning that's in effect for the extreme northern part here of Orange County. And Bryce, earlier we had pretty good rotation on this. There's a scope inside there. It's broad at best, and it looks like it's outflow dominated, means pushing out. And I think, you know, something I'm starting to see here, I'm going to it's definitely showing a sense that it is starting to weaken some. So you can see it's a harder line as you arc from Paoli and then approaching Seymour through Bedford. When we go south of English, the line now is starting to get gaps in there. And I think that that's a good sign that we're starting to lose some of the fuel and the instability there. I want to look west at this storm out of the Seymour area. This is a view westward. I really want to look at this specifically because I'm curious if we're seeing any lightning. This is looking into the core, into that storm that right now has a tornado warning on it in Lawrence County. And you're looking for lightning and you're like, Mark, buddy, I'm not seeing any. This kind of goes to what we're talking about, that it's running out of fuel. We knew that this would hit a wall, and when it hits the wall, it would be substantial. It wouldn't go from a lot of fuel into just maybe a little bit. It would just...
It drops off dramatically.
Dramatically. Yeah. There's some lightning. Okay, so we do have one or two lightning strikes, and that was over about a 30-second period. So that's important to note. These are not electrical. They're not producing a ton of lightning, which also speaks to this idea that it's weakening. And Bryce, I'm going to come back over to analysts real quickly, because on the wider perspective, you can see where we once had a lot of reds and a lot of purples in there. We're not looking at that anymore. We're not looking at on the left in that reflectivity. We're seeing a sign that says these storms are outflow dominated. They're pushing cold air out ahead of them. That warm air is what powers them. They're losing their power source.
Yeah, and that cold air that you mentioned that's pushing out is really weakening. That's why you're starting to see a lot of these little light greens, these little showers now out ahead of the darker reds now. It just looks a lot more junky, to be completely honest, than when it looked even 10, 15 minutes ago. So we'll keep on watching for these minor little tweaks, but this does not look nearly as well put together as even when we came on air. I'd say, honestly, the best storm outside of maybe that tornado warning.
But even that, I mean, the rotation is like a mile across.
Exactly. I mean, there's this one east of Ferdinand. That one's still got a little bit of hail in it, so that one's still got a little bit of energy left into it. But I want you to notice is out ahead of it, this rain that's now developed out ahead of that main line and out of that potentially stronger storm that's moving in is cooling down the atmosphere out ahead of it. So as this moves into it, this should continue to weaken. And you can see the mouse on the left side of the screen here. This should continue to weaken as it moves further to the east, because that rain is cooling down the atmosphere, which is basically just going to choke off the main core of the storm back to our west, Mark.
And that kind of brings up a really, really valid point here. And Bryce just kind of alluded to this, but these storms need fuel. So the fact that there's actually rain now starting to go out ahead of those cores, like Bryce mentioned, or Ferdinand, means that it's now, instead of ingesting warmer air, it's now going to start to ingest cooler. Just got a new severe thunderstorm warning here. So this now includes Salem, Austin, and then moving towards Madison. Bryce, we have 614 lightning strikes here. We'll come back to this in a moment, but I want to do a quick here. I want to track along this whole line, because I know a lot of people are, even if you're not in that tornado warning, you're curious, what does this mean for me? So let's do tracks along this, going north to south. Let's do a storm track across. It's going through the Lawrence County area now, heading through Jackson and then into Washington County. Let's do a track on this, and they're racing off to the east in nearly 65 miles an hour. So this puts it in the Driftwood area 4 minutes from now. Salem, it's about 6 minutes from now. So Salem, you're talking about 5:13 in the morning. Pierce around 13 minutes from now. Scottsburg 21 minutes from now. Wait, that's going to cross I-65 in 21 minutes? That's moving pretty fast. It is. It's moving that quickly. And then it puts it in Georgetown, Indiana, 27 minutes. So this is going to be in the metro Louisville area in the next hour or so. Whether this stays severe thunderstorm warned or not, we will find out. The only reports that we have thus far of damage came out of Du Bois County. We don't have any other reports of damage right now. But nonetheless, these are warnings. And Bryce, I'm curious, is this warning here, do you know if this is an elevated severe thunderstorm warning?
Yes, it has tornado possible on it, and the wind threat is already observed. Obviously, we've had some damage to our west, so we know that this storm has done damage, and they've left that tornado possible tag on that just in case we have that quick spin up. And also, I want to note that that tornado warning that includes Paoli and Salem is also about to get let go. So they're going to let that one go, and I think they're just going to transition over to the severe thunderstorm warning with tornado possible, which I think we could both agree is the right move.
Agreed. Bryce, just one more clarification here. So the Scottsburg-Borden is for 70-mile-an-hour winds?
Scottsburg-Borden is for 60.
Okay. So Bryce and I kind of just alluded to this. We were 70 mile. First, let's go back a little bit further. We were tornado confirmed on the ground. And then we were tornado warned with maybe there could be a tornado. And then we had severe thunderstorm with 70-mile-an-hour destructive winds. And now we've got severe thunderstorm with 60-mile-an-hour, which can still do damage and will do damage. But you see that we may have reached that peak and we're starting to come down, which means that it's running out of fuel. This area Bryce alluded to also still looks pretty good. Bryce, these warnings that we have here, are these the one for Tell City, the one for Leopold? Are we talking 60 or 70 on those warnings?
Let's see. We're 60.
Okay.
It's 70. I think transitioned into the 60. The Tell City one is also 60 miles an hour. Yes.
Good. So what we're seeing here is it's running out of fuel. So what happens here, and I like to use analogies. I think it's just somewhat helpful sometimes because we do deal with a science that has some complications to it. What happens is these storms have absolutely obscene wind energy. It's the same wind energy that produced the tornado outbreak over Missouri. But what's different now is it doesn't have that same fuel. So the wind energy is the engine. Z06, the new Corvette that's coming out. A lot of car enthusiasts are like, I want to get that one. It's super powerful. Well, it is powerful when you put gas in the tank and the right gas. So what it had over Missouri is high octane fuel with a powerful engine. Now what we're dealing with is much, much poorer fuel with still the powerful engine. And that's why we're getting some instances here of severe. Owensboro, just be aware, not our viewing area, but there's a tornado warning just to your southwest, something we watch. I want to put a track on this storm as well. We haven't tracked this yet. That's moving towards Tell City. I know our friends in Alton, Leavenworth, I know Brandenburg and Hardinsburg are going to be curious. What does this mean for you?
This one is also moving east at 50, so I would want to note that it's slowing down a little bit.
And that's also important to note, Bryce. When they're slowing down, it means they're not as tall and they're not tapping as much into the wind energy. These are signs that are good. Oil 4 minutes from now, so that would put it at 5:15. Alton 15 minutes, which would put it at 5:26 a.m. Leavenworth 18 minutes, that's right at 5:30. And Corydon 33 minutes from now, which puts it at around 5:45. Bryce, you're continuing to watch these warnings really closely.
Yeah, we got a new severe thunderstorm warning off
Okay.
of that, what's going to be the expired tornado warning.
Okay.
And again, this one's to our north. So this includes areas like Seymour, Owen,
Okay.
and Driftwood. I just want to see once again if we've got a tornado.
And I'm going to, by the way,
possible
pop
on
up
this.
the Seymour camera while you're looking at that, because we can see as the storm is approaching in on Seymour. Bryce, what are we looking at on that warning? Is it an elevated warning, or is this a lower end one again?
I do think this is a lower end one. There is no tornado possible tag with
Got
this
that.
one. It doesn't
Okay.
look like. And again, this is for Jackson and Jennings County in our area.
Jackson, Jennings.
The one that to our south that still includes Orange and Washington still has that tornado possible tag on it, I believe. This one to the north does not any
Got it.
longer,
Okay.
but it still has that 60-mile-per-hour wind gust threat.
But this
would be
thing
the
is
main
getting
one with
nuked.
it.
I mean,
Yeah,
there's
absolutely.
no question about it when you look at it from a lightning perspective. I'm going to put our lightning strikes back on. I mean, you're looking at it from Seymour. So this is going to be the view right into the storm. What we're seeing here is not a whole lot of lightning right now on the camera. And I'm going to take you back over to Storm View HD to see if we actually have much lightning on radar. No, we don't. And what this is telling us is that thunderstorms are not penetrating as deep into the atmosphere. They then can't tap into as much fuel, and everything is continuing to come down. What does this mean for Louisville? You know, I said this in the video earlier that damaging winds would be my primary threat out of this, but still isolated brief spin-ups could occur, and I would tell you I still believe that. The lightning is not come down as much towards Louisville, and part of that is because the line is a little further west on the, it's angled from northeast to southwest. There is traditionally a little more fuel to the south, which you can see we've got a lot of lightning strikes to the south. We just simply don't have as many to the north. There still remains this oddball tornado warning for Lawrence County. I'm going to just, again, for thoroughness here, take a look in there and see, am I looking at rotation that concerns me? My answer is no. And number two, it's out of county. It's not even in our viewing area anymore. So we're going to take our focus now to this potential for damaging winds, and we'll go back over to the Seymour camera. It's bearing down on Seymour. It's about 6 minutes away. So our Seymour camera, which is aimed west, is going to be highly valuable for us to determine, to see, is this indeed producing damaging winds? Weather Service does share reports with us as the storms move across the area. So we know we've gotten quite a few reports actually out of Du Bois County of power lines that were that got knocked out in some outages. We haven't had a lot of reports outside of that. Also, Campbellsburg, Indiana, Washington County emergency managers just chimed in, and they said that there's a report of a transformer on fire and no power in Campbellsburg, Indiana. And that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. It checks out because, I mean, that's exactly where we saw those strongest winds moving right over. I mean, we mentioned Campbellsburg by name, that it was moving right over, so that does make sense. But, I mean, the transformer on fire and no power, I still think, and again, it's hard to tell just from a verbal report, but I would say that it's definitely more of a straight line wind aspect, and you can still see that lightning starting to show up.
Yeah, that lightning.
As it gets closer to Seymour now.
It's kind of upticked a little bit in that lightning. So status here, the tornado warning has been allowed to expire now for Orange into Washington County. The Weather Service in Indianapolis has issued a new tornado warning. So, you know, I'll tell you.
I don't see it.
Sometimes we agree, sometimes we don't agree. We'll call it like we see it. Let's take a look here at that area of rotation. I mean, there's a little bit of rotation near the Elkinsville area, but if I'm being completely honest with you, it's not in our viewing area anymore. It's outside of Washington, it's outside of Jackson County, and it's going north. So that warning, I'm just going to put a movement backward and forward on this, just again so you can follow the track of where that rotation was. That very weak rotation was. Is near the Elkinsville area, and it is not moving in our direction. I'm not gonna stay with that too long. I know that if you're in Jackson County and you're hearing the tornado sirens, I know it is definitely unnerving. I know that, but I do want you to know that we're not ignoring it. It's just the rotation has now exited completely out of Jackson County and continues to go northward. So the risk here for Jackson County is straight line winds. That is the concern out of Jackson County, is going to be straight line winds. Lightning strikes continue to drop down. I'm just going to take it out wide, take a look at the whole thing here. So on the whole entire line for when we're centered on our viewing area, 1,345 lightning strikes. Northern part of the line certainly has less lightning than the southern part, and the southern part is where we're a little bit more intense. Bryce, I want you to do a look here on Analyst and go up and down that line. Is there anything in there that shows rotation that bothers you? I'm sorry, that shows debris that bothers you. Sorry.
You're good. Yeah, so this one to the south is the one that kind of has my eye a little bit. The one just north of the Leopold area, and I want to note again that there's not as much rain out in front of the southern extent of this little cell right here. So this one moving over Leopold is probably the strongest in our area, maybe just south of English as well. You can see the dark purples here with the cursor on the left side of your TV there. This is going to be the hail core. So this still has strong enough updrafts where it's bringing in, I believe, quarter-size hail from that warning. Now, again, we're not seeing anything that's showing tornado debris within that high reflectivity. Okay. These little notches right here, this is hail. It's lining right up with where the hail core is in the storm, so that's what that's picking up on. And then the further north you go, the more junky it just kind of looks. It's not as well put together. You've got the cooled air, rain-cooled air out in front of it now, especially, for instance, over Marengo, moving into Palmyra, Hardinsburg, that cool rain cooling down the atmosphere out in front of that storm coming out of English. Excuse me, this one to the south, again, doesn't have as much of that cool that air that's cooled off by the rain out in front of it. So the one over Leopold, I think, is probably the strongest one in our area at the moment. Again, that one moving into Seymour is still packing a punch. It still has a little bit of warm air out in front of it to maintain the strength that it's at the moment. But again, that's just the severe thunderstorm warning. That one doesn't even have the tornado possible tagged with it. It's just got the 60-mile-per-hour wind gust, which, don't get me wrong, is still strong and can still do damage, and that'll be in Seymour within the next probably 5 minutes or so, Mark.
And we're not even, and you know, this is a look at some of what we're looking at in terms of if the gate-to-gate shear is high, it's rotating. It's under 10 miles an hour, so it's not rotating. And you're looking at the velocity there. So you've got near Leavenworth, just west of Leavenworth, you've got near the Tell City area, 50, 55 to 60 mile an hour winds. So we're definitely seeing a downward trend here. These are not the storms that they were out west. Hopefully I got that message across to you. That was one of the things I really tried to stamp my best, is that we were going to be looking at intensity coming downward on this, and that's what's happening. But these are still severe, and we're watching potentially 60-mile-an-hour winds that are now approaching the Seymour area. Let me again, just as I did with the other one, I'm going to give you an estimate on those winds here. Radar can give us some idea on the strength of the winds, and we do see in this area some 60 to 70-mile-an-hour winds. Now, you're like, that's really concerning. True, but since it's so far away from the radar site, we're looking at about 3,000 feet above the ground. So that means that we're not looking at necessarily ground level winds. And I think that, let's verify from Seymour. This is about to move into Seymour, so we've got about another 3 minutes until it gets into Seymour, and we'll know. We'll know. We've got an anemometer, I'll show you quickly, on the site here. So right now it's south at 29 miles an hour, and this will update pretty frequently. So this will help us as it moves through Seymour to get an exact sense of how strong those winds are. And as we watch the lightning, but we've got about 30-mile-an-hour winds, and there you can see those lightning strikes. They're a little bit more now northwest of the Seymour area where we're getting some more of those lightning strikes. So I'm just going to bend that camera just a pinch northwest so we can look into there. The reason that's really important, for what it's worth, by the way, is we can see underneath the base, and I just want to make sure as we look underneath the storm that there is no lowering and there's nothing that would concern me. But remember, we continue here with a tornado warning for now. It's been dropped for our viewing area. So that credit to National Weather Service in Indy. They deserve credit for that. When it obviously became clear that it was no longer in our viewing area, they have now since removed the warning from our viewing area. So we're now in a sense where we only have severe thunderstorm warnings for our area. Severe thunderstorm warnings have now been issued out ahead of this stuff all the way almost towards Louisville. So Corydon's now in a severe thunderstorm warning. And Bryce, that the Weather Service continues to be quite aggressive in issuing well out ahead of this line. And my guess here is, despite the fact that we're seeing these are not as intense as they once were, this is probably a big courtesy on the fact that those mid-level winds are absolutely obscene.
Yeah.
And to get our normal winds have been 30 to 40. So if this thunderstorm can just add 20, that's at 60, which is criteria for severe thunderstorm warnings. My guess is they just feel confident that it's not going to take much to bump it over to get to that level.
Yeah, and the new severe thunderstorm warning that Mark was talking about, the one that now includes Corden, I just wanted to point this out here. I know it's a little bit of a jumbled mess with all the warnings here. Now this one does have tornado possible tagged on it. So I just want you to keep that in mind. Leavenworth, Corden, Georgetown, Lanesville, New Amsterdam, Alton. All of you guys are included. It's just a severe thunderstorm warning. And now I say just because it's not a tornado warning, but it still has that tornado possible tag with it, unlike the one to the north, because there are still a couple little notches where it wouldn't take much to get a quick spin up. Now, again, while this line is weakening, you may be asking, okay, if the line's weakening, then why do we need to be worried about the little notches in here? Well, it doesn't take much to get this thing spinning up. We're not talking about these long track dangerous tornadoes like the deep south is probably going to see this afternoon. We're talking about more of these quick little spin ups that can do minor to moderate damage very quickly. And I want to also note that in this severe thunderstorm warning, the hail threat is a little bit larger too. Up to a 1-inch hail is going to be possible within this storm once again. Now also I want to note that this has ticked down a little bit in terms of that hail core. So you can see the hail reaching from English all the way down to just west of the Leavenworth area, north of Leopold. But if we go back a couple scans to this one in particular, you can see how big that hail core was, showing that there's still some strong updrafts in that storm. And as we progress over the next scan, it starts to weaken a little bit. So with that new scan that just came in, there's still a solid hail core just north of 64, just west of the Carefree area. This is moving northeast. So this entire line is included in this new severe thunderstorm warning that has that tornado possible tag on it. We need to keep an eye on these coming out of Owensboro as well. They're still moving into an environment that has some storm energy available. What's helping us and is our saving grace really is the fact that it's 5:23 in the morning. We don't have a lot of warmth. We have plenty of wind energy as we talked about, but we don't have a lot of that storm energy. So these should continue to weaken as well. These two are southwest, still have a really good core with them, so we'll keep an eye as that pushes to the east. But the one that the new severe thunderstorm warning that just came out, that is for 60-mile-an-hour wind gusts. We're still having issues with the velocity tilt, so we'll go back over to Storm View HD here.
Yeah, and I think we probably should avoid on the analyst any velocity at this point out of Louisville, because there's clearly a communication issue with that particular radar. I just want to show you, by the way, the Seymour camera. I'm not sure if this has frozen. I wanted to look and see if there's anything changing there, because I'm trying to connect into that camera with a different computer system, and it is a wheel. So we may have lost communication with that camera, which could mean that some damage was done as that storm came through the Seymour area. Okay, it does look like it just came back online. So give it a couple of seconds here, and the camera's just coming back online. So there you go, you can see it. I'm gonna pull up the numbers here because it'll show us the winds. So the camera is doing basically a health check because it got knocked out clearly, and now it's trying to see if it can regain its control of it. I'm going to try to move the camera and see if it even allows me to. Still definitely having some issues with that camera, so I'm going to get off that and come back here in a moment. Severe thunderstorm warnings across a chunk of our area right now, approaching Louisville. We're going to go up and down the line. Severe thunderstorm is over the Seymour area. We have 60-mile-an-hour winds on this storm. This one does not have a tornado possible tag, but it is worth noting that the shape of this is in the shape of a bow. A bow means that the winds are stronger. Where would they be stronger? Think about it. If the winds are the same here as they are here as they are here, it'll push it out equally, right? So it'll look like a straight line. Well, that would mean then if it's bowing in one area that the winds are stronger. You got it. So the strongest winds right now are crossing 65 between Seymour and Crothersville, heading towards Lovett in the southern part of Jennings County here. So in Seymour, still getting some lightning strikes, but these are racing off to the east at around 65 miles an hour. So North Vernon, 10 to 15 mile an hour. It's faster.
75.
75.
Yeah, they're cooking. That's why I put that
Wow.
storm track on there. They are absolutely cooking.
Okay, so that puts it 10 minutes from now in the North Vernon area. 75 is elite storm motion. Campbell, Indiana, in about 15 minutes from now, and Johnson, it'll take it out. Let's do our exercise, continue to go further south. Strong thunderstorms are approaching Scottsburg, Indiana right now. So we're watching that area for potentially 60-mile-an-hour winds. Salem, there are very strong winds right now in your area, right on top of you. So 60-mile-an-hour winds affecting the Salem area. That portion of the line will cross I-65 in the next 12 to 15 minutes. Bryce has been identifying this area where it looks a little bit stronger. You'll notice that there's just some more reds in here. This is because it's a little bit further west where there's a little bit more fuel. The belief here would be, again, as these make their march to the east, they run into less fuel. I said that when I was on air earlier today that along and west of I-65 would have better fuel, and then it would have a little bit less as it slides eastward, and that should cause a downward trend. So let's track this from southeast through around the Leopold area off to the east. Yep. So this is going to capture areas like Whiskey Run rather, Leavenworth, Corydon, around the Georgetown area and Greenville. And Bryce,
yep.
Let's throw a storm track on there.
Yeah, and this one's also moving at 70, so this one's also really, really moving. 70.
So 70 miles an hour means 1 minute it'll be in the Whiskey Run area, Borden 15, so that's around 5:42 in Borden. That means then New Albany, you're talking about around 5:50 a.m. And then this is moving into the western side of Louisville around 31 minutes from now, which puts it pretty close to the top of the hour. Bryce, I need to ask you, since you go on at 6 a.m., do you have your graphics built yet for your show?
Yep, it's already
good. Just making sure, because otherwise when he goes on the air at 6 o'clock in the morning, we won't be able to see an extended forecast. But so this is about 30 minutes out from getting into Louisville. The wider perspective showing that we continue with storms across a large part of western Kentucky, western Indiana. It's going to be interesting to see that northern part of that line, Bryce. When we look at the high-res data, it showed that area coming through Paoli, Salem, North Vernon, Seymour, Bedford, maintaining rotation and intensity longer, and it showed it struggling on the southern side. Now, up until this point, that southern side is held together pretty well.
Yeah, it has. It has a little bit more access to that instability that Mark was mentioning because it's further to our west, where they were warmer for a longer period of time. Indiana's losing that by the minute, if not by the second, and you can see just how a little bit of a mess it looks like now up in the Salem area. Still has some strong wind gusts, but there's still some lightning, not nearly as much as there was earlier. This one still has a little bit of a bowing segment to it, moving east of 65, so North Vernon, Leavitt, again, that storm is moving at around 75 miles an hour. That's not what we're seeing at the surface, mind you. That's just how fast that storm is moving to the east in general. But once again, in terms of rotation, there's nothing really there that's screaming out to me. Are we going to have strong wind gusts? Sure, but this is the reason why that tornado warning was let go a long while ago. Now, just to keep in mind, again, that this severe thunderstorm warning, that does include Carefree, you are right on the doorstep of it. Moberly, DePaul, Crandall moving into Georgetown, north and south, right around 64 in southern Indiana. This one still has the tornado possible tag on it. So this is the one that we're going to keep on watching, because you can see it has a little bit better of a core to it, those darker shadings. It's got a little bit larger hail in it as well. So Whiskey Run, you're going to notice probably, I'd say maybe pea to marble size hail within the next about 15 minutes or so, if not a little bit quicker than that, as this pushes off to the east. So let's check on a couple of these little notches here. And the good thing is you don't see anything that's really in terms of tight rotation.
And these would be north-south that we would be looking for those pops. We're just not seeing any of that. But there's definitely strong winds that are heading into the Whiskey Run area, Hardinsburg, Indiana. We need to be real aware of this area right now. This is likely where that core that Bryce alluded to is going to be moving. So Borden, 12 minutes from now, 60-mile-an-hour winds. These are moving east at 60 miles an hour. So it's 60-mile-an-hour winds in Borden in 12 minutes. Georgetown, Indiana, 16 minutes from now, which would be 5:46. Louisville, 27 minutes. Again, we're looking at very close to when you come on air at 6 a.m. and then 39 minutes from now in the Middletown area.
And honestly, the way that this is tracking, it's going to take that core of the storm north of Louisville. I really think it's going to. This is moving. They say east. It's really more northeast. And Mark just pointed this out, and I wanted to mention this little area right here. It may not look like much, but this is a key indicator to us that this entire line of storms is going to start to weaken pretty quickly from here. This is the outflow. So you're probably going to notice some more showers from here further to the south that start to cool down the atmosphere out of these stronger storms over near Owensboro, Rockport,
and that was one of the stronger storms. That one actually has a notch on it and slightly separated, but that one that's near Owensboro. But I would say the fact that there is an outflow slightly in front of it may then just minimize that concern altogether. So we're continuing to watch an evolving line. I don't think we're talking top shelf stuff here, guys. I really don't. But can we get severe weather out of this? You bet. Absolutely. And I'll show you. I took this out to the wide perspective earlier, and I showed you lightning strikes. Last time we looked, it was 1,400. Now it's down to 1,195. Bryce, we do have a lot of people that have friends in the Owensboro area. I see you peeking in on that, so I'm going to take a look over. What are you seeing in the Owensboro area? It looks to me like that's a bigger storm. Yeah, so this one is just north of Owensboro. It's just crossing right over the river near Rockport. You can see that little notch right there with my cursor on the left side of the screen. That's where the largest concern is, and you can see it matches up well with a little bit of rotation moving right over Rockport. Now, again, this is about 4,800 feet up, but we're talking around 64 knot winds, Mark, as this starts to move on off to the east. The good thing is I'm not seeing any tornado debris being lofted up. A lot of what you're seeing here, guys, is just this hail. I mean, it's a really large hail core with that one moving just north of the Owensboro area. That's a supercell. I mean, that has a hook on it. That is still, but that's the thing. Bryce, that's a little bit further west, and that's been the case where that's been better fuel. We're also starting to see something that showed up in the high-resolution data, and that is showers popping near E-Town. If that stuff goes out ahead of this other line, it disrupts the inflow. It disrupts the fuel going into it. There's a lot of signs here that says that we're starting to, we're continuing to see a downward trend. But the areas that are further west, these storms still have access to more fuel, greater concern for severe weather. And that storm, you know, you can see as you go towards Owensboro, there is some lightning, but look at the storms that are much further west. There's still tons of lightning that is south of around the Corydon, Kentucky area. That's going to be near Henderson. A lot of lightning, lot. And then as we start to move towards our area, there's still a little bit, but it is definitely not the storm cluster that it once was. We'll scope inside here. Make sure that there's nothing that concerns us from a rotation perspective. This is just the way you do things when we look and analyze storms. Is there anything in there that shows rotation? Bryce, just kind of looks like the outflow on that portion of the storm.
Yeah, it does. I mean, it's got some strong winds with it, don't get me wrong, but none of this is really indicating that we're going to have any spin-ups to that northern extent. Now, again, still for the southern one, the northern severe thunderstorm warning doesn't have a tornado possible tag on it. This one that Mark's about to move over does, but even then it's moving into an environment that's starting to get cooled off by the rain in front of it. So especially the one just south of the Paoli area.
There's nothing in there.
No, it's not. Even in that main core where that storm is, right over the Marengo area, it's got a lot of hail, but what you'll notice, and Mark can attest to this as well, just west of Palmyra, there's that rain that's going to start to get out ahead of it and start to cool that one down as well, and a little bit of an outflow coming off of that one too.
And this is definitely the one to watch right now, would be the storm north of Owensboro, right along the Ohio River. It indeed does have some rotation on it. You can see that right here where the reds and the greens are right next to each other. There's a new scan. That's definitely the most concerning storm. If anything deserves a tornado possible or tornado warning, it would be towards Tell City. That is, Perry County is a county that we got to watch on that. Technically outside of our viewing area, but something that we've got to watch really closely. That storm is going to go right along the Ohio River, and there's no question about it. That is the strongest storm right now anywhere, I think, that's in our immediate region. We still have severe thunderstorm warnings that are all over the place. So Jennings County, severe thunderstorm warning, western part of Jefferson County, Indiana, Scott County. We've got it for Clark County. We've got one for you in Washington County. Salem, be aware, it's on top of you. West Louisville, not quite yet. Floyd County, severe thunderstorm warning, 60-mile-an-hour winds about 12 to 14 minutes out of the Corydon area. So interestingly enough, Bryce, I'm going to take you back over because we looked at Seymour earlier. I'm curious if there was damage done up there.
There may have been some straight line wind damage. I mean, that thing is still packing a punch. It doesn't have any rotation with it.
But locked. That camera's froze.
Yeah, it is. And it's important to note that this camera is elevated, so it's going to get some of those stronger winds compared down on the road. There's a look at Corydon. You can see the trees blowing around a little bit as that storm starts to approach it. And again, this is going to be pushing out that cold air ahead of it. So you're going to start to notice that these trees in Corydon are going to start blowing around a little bit more here over the next 5 minutes before that storm actually gets there, because of that cooler air being blown out ahead of the storm that we've been watching around the English area, which in turn will help weaken it. As it pushes its way further to the east, Mark.
And Bryce, I think this is the first time we've actually had a camera get knocked offline since we've had our network out here. So yeah, I'm really curious. We'll find out, obviously, in the coming hours if any damage was done there, but we definitely had at least a power surge. We know that for a fact because the camera went into a reset mode. When it went into the reset mode, that's when you saw it panning all over the place, and then we never regained control of that camera. So it is absolutely possible that that is basically some damage that was done. That camera itself specifically is at Schneck Medical, and so it's on top of Schneck Medical. So it's an area where, because it's a hospital, you would expect it not to lose power. So we'll find out, like I said, but that camera to us right now is not functional. So that camera is offline as we stand right now. And looking at the Corydon area, we're looking near the square just to kind of see if we've got any winds that are strong right now, and not yet right now. You're on Storm View HD right now looking at that storm that's coming down the Ohio River. How's it looking now, Bryce?
This one still has my concern. The rotation is not incredibly tight. I want to point that out, but I also want to point out that this thing has a mean look to it. I mean, you want to talk about a hook. I mean, it's almost... It's starting to get a little textbook here with that inflow notch pouring in right into the core of that storm, right where that hail core is, just south of the Christney area. Again, this is just outside of our viewing area, but it's not far. And this would take this probably toward the Tell City area and over toward Leopold here soon. Let's see if we can put a track out on this. Hard to tell which severe thunderstorm warning this is included in. I think it's this one. It's moving east at around 60, Mark.
We do, by the way, have reports of a woodshed that was now thrown onto a car in Du Bois County between Holland and Huntingburg. Based on the picture that I can see, it doesn't look like it looks like more of a carport kind of scenario, so those can get lofted pretty easily. But nonetheless, there is definitely damage. So we've got Du Bois County, of all the counties we have, is reporting the most damage of anything that we know of at this point.
Yep, and just to point again on this storm to our southeast, this one is moving at around 60 miles an hour as well, and it's moving, it's almost northeast really. So if we put a track about where this is about to go, so Tell City, I give you about a half an hour. Now by the time it gets there, the question is, can it maintain the strength that it is currently at? If you know anybody in around Adair, Ensor area, again, just outside of our viewing area, tell them to keep an eye on this one. The good thing is, Mark, I'm not seeing as strong of an inflow notch now with that latest scan.
Okay, so that's good
that
news.
one south of Owensboro. Now the one north of Owensboro is worth keeping an eye on, because that one's getting closer to our viewing area now, and that one's got that little bit of a hook still to it.
Yeah, that one definitely, I think, like we kind of have been alluding to, that's the storm to watch right now. It doesn't mean that everything else isn't or something we're watching. North Vernon, we're watching that storm with 60-mile-an-hour winds moving across York County. Scottsburg, watching storm moving across York County. But we definitely have, in and around Owensboro, our strongest storms. So Scottsburg, the area of strongest winds right now is moving through North Vernon. North Vernon, be aware, west winds of 60 miles an hour will be blasting through your area and Lovett. We notice that the bow is losing the bow. So this is probably losing some of its most intense winds. Deputy through Scottsburg and Salem, some 60-mile-an-hour winds are possible, but again, I would tell you it does not look good. This storm looks a little bit better to me. It still is one that Bryce has been focused on. Fredericksburg through Whiskey Run. So Borden, you're talking about 12 minutes from now, 8 minutes from now in the Greenville area. Corydon, you're right on the northern edge of that thing, but that's about 4 to 5 minutes from now. And then Georgetown, Indiana, you're talking about 12 minutes from now. These stronger storms back to the west, while not in our viewing area, there's a hail core right now on the storm heading towards Tell City.
That one to the south's got a really big hail core on it too.
And that is heading into Owensboro.
Yep.
So Owensboro, this one could produce some 70s. Anything that has hail is going to have the ability to produce stronger winds. Why? It just penetrates deeper into the atmosphere and has access to more of that strong wind energy. I want to go back to the Corydon camera because, again, that's going to be a camera that will be hit by these winds. So maybe this can give us an estimate. We tried to do this, Bryce, with Seymour, and before we were able to, it appears that the camera lost power. Does that mean Seymour's without power? Does that mean that there was a flicker? We don't know. There was a lightning strike out of the Corydon area. But I want to stay on this camera for a moment because this will be really important. And you can look there on the bottom of the screen, see that flag? That is now not blowing to the east or towards the west. That is now blowing towards the east, so that means there's cold air ahead of that storm.
Yeah, and which is going to help weaken this, as we were talking about, because as these storms start to become outflow dominated, it pushes that cold air out in front of it. And cold air and strong storms do not mix. They just don't. Cold air will kill a storm so quickly, I mean, within a matter of minutes. So we should keep an eye on this one, but I do think we're going to continue to watch a little bit more weakening. It does not look as well put together as it did earlier. It still has a little bit of a hail core with it. Fredericksburg, you're going to have some hail overhead within the next couple of minutes or so. Palmyra, you're right on the doorstep of this as well. Those stronger gusts moving into Palmyra, Corydon, the New Pekin area here soon. And again, this is for 60-mile-an-hour wind gusts. But as this continues to weaken, I do expect that still to come down. Now, as Mark mentioned, the one up near North Vernon, for the moment at least, still shows a little bit of that bowing, but not as much as it did before. And they have gone ahead and issued that severe thunderstorm warning out further to the east outside of our viewing area, since this is about to move out now of our viewing area. That one has a little bit of a bowing segment still. This is the one that moved through Seymour that knocked out power to our tower camera. Not a lot of lightning left in that one. And then as we look to the south again, moving into Tell City, this is going to be the one that's up next. As it continues to get closer to our viewing areas, it starts to get closer to around English and Oil. So that's what we're going to be watching for next, Mark, because there's not as much.
Well, look at that hook, though. Look at that hook on that storm near Tell City.
Exactly. This one still has a little bit more of my concern.
Wow.
I mean, it has a real strong inflow notch to it. That is kind of concerning. And again, there's not as much of that rain out in front of it that's going to cool off that atmosphere.
Agreed.
So this still has a little bit more access to that higher instability that these storms have to have to maintain their strength. I mean, just a ridiculously large hail core. Still with this one.
Well, you got blacks in there. That's 70, 71 dBZ.
This one is, yeah, 70.
So 70 dBZ
72,
could support quarter to golf ball size
And
hail.
this one to the south.
That one looks like a 71. There's a little white in there. Oh no, that's a fingerprint. That's a joke in our weather center because obviously TV people wear makeup sometimes. If you touch your face and then a computer, you end up with some what looks like white but is in fact somebody's makeup on that computer screen. But yeah, we're watching these storms that are approaching Louisville. I've actually put out a note to the Weather Service to ask them if they're getting any reports right now in terms of damage, because the storms are looking more and more ragged. Outside of this storm near Tell City, this is by far the best looking storm that we have anywhere in our area. This one's heading towards Huff. And then we have an area that's likely going to produce severe hail in the Owensboro area. This one may be able to produce quarters and possibly even a little bit larger. Let me look at that actual warning on this one. So
yeah,
baseballs.
Yep.
All right, guys, if you have any friends in the Owensboro area, they have got to take shelter from the hail. So baseball size hail and 70-mile-an-hour winds are moving into Owensboro. That is a serious storm.
Those updrafts are insanely strong to bring in that size hail. You don't see that around, and you also notice that the threat level there is destructive. And that's important to note that the NWS a few years ago or so started to put in threat levels just to kind of give you guys a little bit better of an understand of what kind of damage that this can do. And again, this is outside of our viewing area, but considering this is the strongest storm and it's heading toward our area, in what capacity when it gets here, we'll see it. It's worth noting, if you know anybody in Owensboro, you don't need to be outside with this. This can cause damage to cars, roofs, and I guarantee you it will, especially since it's moving over a really populated area
this is super dangerous for Owensboro.
Into Owensboro. And Mark, I want to note again that this one to the north, I'm kind of surprised that there isn't a tornado warning on this.
Actually, just went. Look at that. The RFD just caught up to it and overtook that hook a little bit.
Yep, it sure did. Right when I said there.
You're moving that zoom so fast. I think I'm getting seasick here, man.
Yeah, so they're not as much of a hook now with that one, just north of Owensboro. But again, this is heading toward our area, so it's worth mentioning. Now for Louisville, again, these storms to our west, these are going to miss Louisville. So these are going up toward Borden now.
And they're weakening.
And they are weakening. They look a lot weaker than what they looked like earlier.
It looks like they're letting warnings go.
Yeah, they just let go of the severe thunderstorm warning that included Scottsburg, Austin, Deputy. That has been let go. So this is just a plain old regular strong thunderstorm now. So I think we need to focus our attention still on this one that's just south of the Fredericksburg area, moving into Palmyra. It's still in that severe thunderstorm warning with tornado possible on it, but it's pretty weak. I still think the ones down here to the south is going to be the main show up next.
So let's take a look now at what we've got in Corden on our camera to see if we're getting any increase in wind. Trees blowing around a little bit, but you know, we've had fairly strong winds here throughout the evening anyways. So that we're probably looking at some 30-mile-an-hour winds at this point right now. This is doing what it should have. It is weakening on approach now towards Louisville. The strongest storm, it's not our viewing area, but there are a lot of people that have friends and family around the Owensboro area, and this is a major, major, major concern right now. You know, you've been here obviously with me and lived here for a while, Bryce, growing up in this area, and baseballs, they don't happen very often.
No, you don't see them very often. Even the little hailstorm we had the other day that included Louisville, my mom even FaceTime was like, I've never seen hail like this before. And they were about maybe marble-sized hail, which don't get me wrong, is still impactful. But when you compare marbles to baseballs, I mean, it's night and day in terms of what it can do, Mark.
And so just so you get an idea what a baseball-sized hail would do, I've storm chased, was underneath storms with baseball-sized hail. So you're talking about a piece of ice that's going to be this big. That piece of ice is falling from the sky at about 100 miles an hour. So what this would be like is going in front of a professional baseball pitcher. You're going to go there, you're going to stand by the backstop, and you're just going to go like this and say, throw that ball at me at 100 miles an hour. That's how fast baseball-sized hail is coming down. 90 to 100 miles an hour. Obviously the size of a baseball. It would be like getting hit with a baseball from a professional pitcher. That's what's in Owensboro right now. And you're like, well, that's a little west. No, remember, this is moving. So in the time that the radar will have updated, this will have moved through Owensboro. Baseball-sized hail that will damage roofs, that will pop dents in vehicles, that is destructive. It is not low-end stuff. When you get baseballs, it makes your eyes pop. Let's now go out to the wider perspective. I want to look at that storm near Tell City one more time, and let's drop the warning off the map here. So the storm near Tell City had a hook on it. What we saw is over Santa Claus was the core, and this was the hook on the southern side. Bryce, let's zoom a little bit more towards Tell City, and I want to roll it back one frame so you can see the evolution of this storm. Look at the hook. And then as we start to move forward, there it is right there, and then moving forward, it's not as well defined. We also notice that the hail core that moved through Santa Claus is not as well defined. But all that said, be aware that north of Leopold, we are going to be looking at potentially some quarter-size hail out of this one. The area that did have some subtle rotation, if we could scope that near the Troy area, that's going to be right over the Ohio River. Subtle rotation there. And then we'll go out to the wider perspective. We will continue to keep an eye on this storm. The storm right now north of Corden, we're definitely seeing a lot of this running out of fuel. The lightning strikes, notice, really, really infrequent here. And we're scoping in the storm, and if I'm being transparent, I'm completely not impressed, and I don't even think it's severe anymore. We'll go north through Borden. We'll notice that on the front end of this, Bryce, we're basically have lost the lightning on the front end from Scottsburg, Underwood through Borden. The reason we're seeing that, Bryce, no lightning, we've lost the fuel. Yeah, so with the fuel dropping, it's outpacing. This is what we thought would happen tonight. Every time we make a forecast, it's still, all of these are ultra challenging, but we're seeing happen within the storms what we think we should see based on what the data indicates.
Yeah, and as we were talking about, we noticed this in the data the last couple of days that these storms are probably going to outpace the storm energy. So basically the energy that's to our west is higher than what it is here, and these storms are moving so fast. I mean, you saw some earlier that were moving 70, 75 miles an hour. They're getting ahead of that energy, and they're basically too fast in order to stay in it. That's why these storms over near Santa Claus, Tell City, and down near Owensboro have a little bit better of a core to it, or a lot better of a core, because there's more storm energy to our west. So that's going to be interesting to watch here, Mark, heading over the next few minutes as we get closer to the top of the hour and as we come on air into the normal show, what these storms are going to do as they move off to the east. My gut continues to say they're going to weaken because they're moving into a less conducive environment. It's still important to note that there's not any rain out ahead of it, so it still has some access to
but it still has to run
air
out because the dew points are not there, and it's outpaced those higher dew points to the west.
So I would say that these have probably peaked in terms of their potential to our southwest. Doesn't mean they can't impact our area, because they will be moving into our area within the next hour, Mark.
And a lot of people are curious about this. So what about the Derby City 10K? They put out a statement at 5:10 this morning that they're in what they refer to as a yellow alert. Yellow alert means that they're going to be working with the Weather Service to determine the forecast impact on the race. They are stating that you should be prepared for changing conditions and pay extra attention to announcements. The Derby City 10K right now is saying that they are planning for an on-time start.
I think it's going to depend on a lot of what those storms to our southwest do.
You start something with a tornado watch in effect, an outdoor running event, and I don't know. I don't know, man. I'm not saying that we're going to have severe weather in the area. I'm saying that when you have a tornado watch and you say, hey, let's go outside and run, I think you're sending a pretty tough message to people. So we continue with severe thunderstorm warnings here. The storm near Santa Claus continues to show that it is showing a weakening signal. What I mean by that is it does not have that hook that it once had. It's starting to flatten out, which is important. The storm going through Owensboro is a beast. This one has baseball-sized hail. So baseball-sized hail moving through the Owensboro area. This is a dangerous storm because of the hail size. It does have a slight hook on that. Bryce, let's have a look in that. Can you see, are you seeing anything in there other than the map? Wow, that hail core. That hail is over Rome. I'm going to come over to you. So that white, that's Rome. Rome, Kentucky. This is near Owensboro. I'm going to guess on that 74.
76.5.
That's softballs.
That is obscene. That is obscene.
So this is exceptionally dangerous storm near Owensboro.
And I want to point that on the right side of your screen, what we use to look at tornado debris, this also picks up a lot of hail, which is why you see that huge blue dot right there just west of Owensboro. It's picking up on the hail, which obviously is a lot bigger than a normal raindrop. So that's what that's picking up on. That would be the biggest threat with this one by far, Mark. I mean, this one has such strong updrafts because there's so much more instability to our west. And as you mentioned, this one that was moving near Owensboro, that's now just east of Santa Claus, it's getting closer to our area. As you mentioned, that notch, not nearly as impressive. There's still some little quirks in there that we're going to have to watch as it moves into our area as we get closer to 6 o'clock.
And they are going severe where possible on that one.
Yes.
So I think that the message we would say with that one is it doesn't have a tornado that it appears right now, but one could form with little or no advance notice. And we kind of a few years ago had these severe tornado possibles that people started to see, and they're like, why do you use that? Well, we use that because after the 2011 super outbreak, which was April 27, 2011, after that occurred, we went out, not Bryce and I, but the weather community, and asked people when those very serious tornadoes occurred in the afternoon, why did they not take those tornado warnings as seriously? What we were told is they had been under a tornado warning so many times where nothing had happened that they stopped paying attention. So the weather community then came together and said, we can't go down this road anymore. Our tornado warning is what protects and saves people's lives. If they're not listening to us anymore, we've got to change strategy. At that time, the false alarm rate was 75%. 3 out of every 4 tornado warnings went bust and did not produce a tornado. So we then developed this idea that in these storms like this scenario where you can get a quick spin up, we're going to go with the severe with tornado possible. If it becomes obvious that a tornado is occurring, we would update immediately. And one of these can occur, but we go with the severe with tornado possible. So what does this mean from a strategy for you? This means if you're in Oil or Leopold, if it's me, if it's my family, I'm going to go to a safe spot because I know that a tornado could occur very, very quickly and without any advance notice. And Bryce, you're going to be eyeballing and really watching that particular storm because it A, has a hail core, and I'm going to come back over to the analyst. A, it has a hail core, and B, it's still showing some rotation. You can't get that hail core if the storm's not rotating.
Right, exactly. And that, the hail core in general and the size of it goes to show it's almost like the heart of the storm, basically, and just showing you how strong that the updrafts that are pulling that air up so quickly are in this. I mean, this thing is still a supercell. It's a beast. Does it have as much rotation as earlier? No. But I mean, the last thing you want to do is step out with baseball-sized hail, even if this one doesn't have that, as it rolls just outside of the Owensboro area.
God, so, watch that one, boy.
Yeah, this one's got to be close. We have to keep an eye on this one in particular. It is outside of our viewing area at the moment. But the reason why Mark says that is, first of all, this has the history of wrapping up very easily and having that strong hook on it. But you've got a lot of wind building right into this system here, and right here where the Mark's cursor is, that's going to be where that notch starts to form once again. It's pulling that warm air still into it because, again, the instability to our west is still a little higher than where it is here east around the Louisville area and even in our viewing area. So as it gets close, this is why this severe thunderstorm warning has that tornado possible tag on it, simply because it doesn't take much. It can happen in one scan or even in between scans for that hook to start to reform once again, Mark, because once again, there's not any rain really out in front of this to cool down the atmosphere ahead of it and start to choke that one off.
So I also want to note here, Bryce, you see the little green line ahead of that storm. That thing may be going outflow dominated.
Oh, yep.
If that is the case, then that thing would weaken off dramatically.
That's a good sign.
So these are things that we're watching. We've got our engineer Bo in here. Bo is going to look into the Seymour camera. Bo, we believe that camera was knocked offline when the strong winds came through. I just want to note to our producer and to Raina that when we start at 6 a.m., we're going to go into the newscast. We don't have any tornado warnings active right now. Bryce, do you need to change anything on the graphics to get? So guys, if you could, can production go over to our Weather Picks computers so that we can see the 3 cameras? What that's going to do is allow Bryce a moment to load up his show so that he's ready to go. We got Weather Picks up. Bryce is going to load his show. So that Seymour camera has been frozen since the strong storm went through. It's on top of Schneck Medical, which it's probably a few hundred feet above the ground. This is kind of important because it means that likely we're subject to the stronger winds. And that may have been what knocked that camera offline. Our engineer, Bo, is going to be looking into that and trying to figure out what occurred there. And maybe somebody will have to make a drive, maybe not, hopefully not. But we'll try to get that camera back online here. So as it stands right now, we're 5:59 a.m. We've got a tornado watch in effect through 10 a.m. This goes for another 4 hours. Will the Weather Service let it ride through 10 a.m.? I think that it's conceivable at least through 8, and then beyond that we'll see. We've got severe thunderstorm warnings that remain in effect right now for Jennings County, Clark, Floyd, Washington County, Indiana. You are under a severe thunderstorm warning that goes through Harrison County. We have a severe thunderstorm warning going westward into the Crawford County area. That's in Indiana. And then we cross the river, and then Meade County and Breckenridge County. We've got severe thunderstorm warnings in effect here. We're going to continue to watch these storms really closely. We're going to start our newscast. It's 6 o'clock in the morning right now. WDRB News in the morning starts right now.
Good morning, I'm Marina Katko, and Bryce, you and Mark have been keeping people safe all morning long from those dangerous storms.
Yeah, more moving into our area now. The good thing is in terms of Louisville, where a lot of you are watching, a lot of the storms are moving through southern Indiana at the moment. The ones to the west still have a lot of power to them, specifically around the Owensboro area. There's more instability over there. Now you're like, why don't we have a lot of instability? I mean, we hit 82 yesterday afternoon. We tied a record high from back in 2012, which, if you remember, was a really hot year. So we tied a record high. We have the warmth. We had high dew points. Why don't we have a lot of instability? Well, first of all, it's 6 o'clock in the morning. And these storms to the west are running out of that power because we just don't have a lot of heat anymore. And our dew points are 57. You need to get around 60 or above to have really the chance of having strong to severe weather in a widespread aspect. I also want to note the winds are starting to pick up a little bit. And the good thing is with this line moving through, these winds are out of the south-southwest. If these were out of the southeast at the moment, we'd be talking about a lot higher of a tornado threat. We're at 72 right now in Louisville. You can see where the rain-cooled air has already moved through. I mean, it's 58 up in Bedford for the moment. And there's a lot more warm air this came from. Wind gusts around 30 to 35 miles an hour right now, but we know that that has been higher in local instances where we've had those severe thunderstorm warnings. We have a tornado watch out until 10 a.m. for almost our entire viewing area except for Adair County, and a couple severe thunderstorm warnings to our west. We still have the wind advisory out for winds outside of thunderstorms as you head through the day today until 8 o'clock tonight. So this is what the lines look like. And you see the amount of lightning it has, and then it starts to just die off once it gets into our area, because these storms are moving so fast that they're moving away from where the higher storm energy is back to our west. This is a powerhouse low, and it's not the only one. This one back down near Texas is heading up into the deep south, and I'm telling you right now, the deep south is going to have a very long day ahead of them in terms of severe weather. For us, we still have strong to severe storms moving into the area now. Breckenridge County, now under that severe thunderstorm warning. We're going to continue to track this out and watch this closely for the rest of the morning before another refire of more pop up later on this afternoon. We'll time that out for you here in about 10 minutes. Ball size hail rolling through the Sellersburg area and some strong wind gusts as well. We just gusted to 69 miles an hour at the Louisville airport. So this severe thunderstorm warning has obviously played out to be true. So we got the hail moving through Louisville. We got hail moving through River Bluff into Goshen now. This is the reason why I'm just going to go wall that we do have pretty decently large hail, something that we don't see very often around here rolling into our area. So if you're to ask me who's up next, when we watch the track of this, Linview, you're getting it right now. If you live over near the Hikes Point area, Watterson Park, West Butyl, Newburgh, you got a lot of hail moving in here soon. Wellington area, let's say around Bardstown Road and Hikes Lane, you're going to get some heavy, or obviously the heavy rain, but obviously some decently sized hail as well. There's that hail core in that system. It's a severe thunderstorm warning. This is for winds gusting up to around 60 miles an hour, which we just saw Louisville Airport, which this moved right over, by the way, gust to around 70. So when we pull up the two panel here, I want to pull up some wind gusts that we could be seeing here at the surface for the moment. So around here, we're probably looking at around 50 to 55 mile an hour winds moving over the Linview area. There's that newest update. And as we talked about, that hail core now moving over West Butyl, Watterson Park, moving over toward the Hikes Point area. Next up is going to be Seneca Gardens, heading toward St. Regis Park, St. Matthews. I know that's a pretty condensed area there as well, highly populated. That's where the core of this storm's moving to next. 60+ mile an hour wind gusts have been confirmed from the Louisville airport within the core of this storm as it's been pushing across our area. So in addition to the large hail, you need to keep in mind you're going to have some strong wind gusts that can and probably will do some damage. If we can pull up correlation coefficient over here, a lot of these high colors, what we look normally for tornado debris, this right here is not that. This is more than likely the hail that the radar is picking up, because obviously those hailstones are going to be a lot larger than normal size raindrops. So again, if you're just now joining in, you're catching up, getting woken up by the loud hail moving on through. We got heavy, very large hail moving through Goshen, moving through parts of Oldham County. This is going to continue to ride up I-71. This is also included in another severe thunderstorm warning. And as we head over the past few minutes and the last few scans, you head forward, you can see it's moving through Goshen. We're going to head over toward the Pendleton and LaGrange area, probably within the next about 20 to 30 minutes. Other than that, to our south, I do think we need to keep an eye on the southern extent of this storm, simply because, again, there's a good amount of inflow rolling into the left side of your screen here. You can see my cursor. That inflow is rolling in, and we're going to watch to make sure we don't see a hook there. But I would focus more on the fact that we do have damaging wind gusts and some large hail moving through right now. Again, a 69-mile-an-hour wind gust reported at the Louisville airport. We have reports in New Albany of large hail up to around golf ball size. No damage reports out of Floyd's Knobs at the moment, but we did have high wind reports and hail out of Corydon. I've got a ton of pictures flooding in from you guys. I really appreciate that. Keep sending them in. We're going to stay wall to wall for maybe about the next 5 minutes or so of production, and then we'll get back to normal news. But I really wanted to hone in on the fact this is high impact simply because of the size of the hail that's moving through. So when we look at the warning, 70-mile-per-hour wind gusts now, this storm has been upgraded to, because obviously we had that at the airport, and quarter-size hail. So you're probably talking around golf ball size hail rolling through parts of West Butyl, moving into St. Regis Park. Hurstbourne, you're going to be up next as this goes over toward the east end of Louisville here within the next about 10 to 15 minutes or so. I don't want to leave out Oldham County because this is a decent sized hail core as well, right along I-71. If you know anybody driving on 71 heading toward Goshen, let them know they're about to run into a pretty large hail core and that heavy rain that's pushing its way on through. The southern extent of this on the right side of your screen, you can see very broad rotation. Those reds and greens are close to each other, but we're not talking about a tight couplet. So am I worried at the moment about a spin-up tornado? I would say no. Is it out of the realm of possibility? I would also say no. It's worth watching. I would focus more on the strong wind gusts here, especially since we had a confirmed near 70-mile-an-hour wind gust at the airport. So you've got likely 60 to 70-mile-per-hour winds rolling through parts of, let's say, St. Regis Park now once this new update comes in here in just a few minutes. Hurstbourne heading over toward Linden. You guys are going to be up next. Again, 60 to 70-mile-per-hour wind gusts. There's a lot of trees in this area too. That can knock trees and that can knock power lines down. This is something to keep in mind. If you have to be out over the next about 15 minutes or so on the east side of Louisville, east of 65, I would hold off just for your own safety, and this is not something you want to be out driving in either. Again, up along 71, there goes that hail core. If you are west of 65, southwest Louisville, you're in the all clear of this now as the cell continues to push its way across the east. So a couple more minutes here. We'll keep an eye on this one. Again, I just wanted to come on to live and just do wall-to-wall for a moment, simply because of the size of the hail that's rolling its way on through. I know a lot of people, it's a Saturday morning, it's 7:40. We've got the race downtown. We've got multiple people heading out to the grocery store, wherever, plans on an early Saturday. So now with the newest radar scan, very large hail moving through St. Regis Park, moving over to the Hurstbourne area. We're talking around 6 Mile Lane. Moving over toward Breckenridge Lane area, Linden, Middletown, Anchorage, Rolling Hills. You guys are up next. There's a lot of homes and a lot of suburbs through here. If we zoom in on what areas look like they're going to be the highest impact at the moment, here's a couple of smaller locations. Cambridge neighborhood, Houston Acres, Hurstbourne Acres. We're talking around State Road 155, right over toward I-64 at the Watterson interchange. This is going to be another area where we've got that large hail falling. Oldham County, I'm not forgetting you. We're still moving this hail core up through a 71, heading into Westport, heading into Buckner, and heading into LaGrange at the moment. High impact, worth watching, and I still think we need to keep an eye on the southern extent of this storm here. This little tail end right here, we need to watch just in case we see a little rotation start to uptick a little bit. Now on the right side of your screen, where my cursor is, you see those reds and greens real close to each other. For the moment, it is very broad, which is good, but it is worth keeping an eye on as this continues to push its way on off to the east. Give you another broad aspect here, just kind of take a little bit of a breather. Some more storms are rolling into our northwestern communities, non-severe. The only severe storms we have in our area are moving through Louisville at the moment. That's for wind gusts up to 70 miles an hour. And hail that's obviously already dropped around golf ball size, if not a little bit larger, toward the east side of Louisville now. And then a new severe thunderstorm warning that includes Oldham County. This is for ping pong ball size hail and wind gusts up to around 60 miles an hour. Let's drop back down to the one over Louisville again. Once again, this is for 70-mile-an-hour wind gusts and quarter-size hail. This can do damage to roofs, this can do damage to cars, and this is something, again, that I just wanted to come on air and make sure that we're watching as this continues to push across, because it's a Saturday morning, it's high impact. I know a lot of people are going to be out and about here heading over the next couple of hours. So let's switch over to Storm View HD. Again, this severe thunderstorm warning goes until 8 a.m. The one rolling through Louisville right now is crossing right over I-64, and it's approaching the Snyder interchange. If you are along Breckenridge Lane up through the Middletown area, this is coming up to you next. We flip back over to reflectivity once again, and let's put a little bit of a storm track on this to give you guys a couple of minutes here in advance, especially where this hail core is, and this is moving at around 60 miles an hour. So J-Town, it's on top of you. Eastwood, you got about another 14 minutes. Todd's Point, maybe just under 30 minutes. And it's hard even to get the storm track because of how fast this thing's moving. So let's move this out a little bit more so we can include Oldham County in this. Both of these storms are moving east at around 60 miles an hour. So they're moving at a good pace. They have large hail still embedded in it. We'll put that storm track out now to around 60. And there's a few more times for you. Simpsonville, we'll pull up that Uville golf course cam here in a minute now. The sun's coming up. You got about 10 minutes until hail and heavy rain, wind gusts up to around 60 starts to roll its way on through. Owenton, 32 minutes. Peaks Mill, about 42. Again, this is not a tornado warning. If you're wondering why we're doing wall-to-wall, it's simply because of the hail that's rolling on through and the very strong wind gusts. We'll throw it back to programming here in just a moment. Hail core now over Blue Ridge Manor, over the Middletown area. We'll flip back over to GR2 analyst. The good thing is that rotation down near J-Town has come down a lot, which is really good. But again, that real large hail and those deep black colors and even some whites in there, that's probably golf ball, if not a little bit size hail, moving through Blue Ridge Manor and over toward the Douglas Hills area. Middletown's up next. Anchorage, you're after them as this continues to push its way on off to the northeast. Still, eastern Oldham County is included in this. East side of Louisville, prepare for 60 to 70 mile per hour wind gusts and large hail as this continues to go through, and we'll continue tracking this as we head over the next few minutes. We'll be right back after this break. Large hail moving through our area right now. This is what it looked like in Georgetown as that one that's moving through Oldham County at the moment moved its way on through southern Indiana. That looks about golf ball size hail to me, and more golf ball size hail through Lanesville. Louisville, you've got hail moving through at the moment. Corydon is calm at the moment. So is New Albany. They saw that storm roll through earlier as things started to ramp on up. You can see the cooler air now. Temperatures literally dropping before your eyes as that rain started to roll on through. Reason behind it, you've got a lot higher dew points now to our south. Now we're still borderline, which is why a lot of these storms that are moving in are still struggling, but they have incredibly strong updrafts because the wind energy with this stuff is